So let's take a look at if we think we have cancer, how do we know and what do we do to prevent it from spreading and moving around? So the first step is identifying. Do you think you have a cancerous growth occurring? Now, obviously, if it's internal, we don't know. But if you have a melanoma, which is where most cases are going to start, we see lots and lots and lots of new cases of melanoma happening every year. And then there is the potential that it will spread. Unfortunately, obviously, there are lots of other types that we don't identify early enough or as early as we'd like. But let's just start with and work with the melanoma situation because that's an easy one for us to take a look at. So this young woman here discovers she's got this mole and it has the characteristics of a melanoma. So the thing to look at with the characteristics, what makes one mole potentially cancerous versus another mole that's not? So you look for certain signals. Asymmetrical or asymmetry, meaning it's not round, it's not oval, it doesn't have a normal shape to it. So a normal mole probably be something like that, or maybe like that. It's not going to be bumpy and jagged and have all of these indentations and folds and convolutions. That's something that's not growing normal. That's one of the signals. These irregular margins. Well, look at these aren't even. These margins or these shapes here are not symmetrical. They're not consistent. They're not normal with normal cell growth. One side's growing a little bit more than another. It just looks odd. Size is often much larger than what we would expect for a normal growth. And then the appearance can change. Notice the color differences between this portion to this portion to that portion. And it may change over the next couple of weeks. It turns dark, it turns reddish. Sometimes they're tender and sore. So these are all signals that this isn't just a normal mole on a person. We all have moles and spots and variations to our skin, but that's not normal. So we want to identify that. We want to say, okay, we got the signals that tell us something's wrong. Then we want to identify what is it. And this is where we should be going to our physician and saying, I have a family history, my parents or grandparents or etc. have had cancer, I have concerns, can you take a look at this? Hopefully, the physician can look at it and say, you're fine, you're okay. This is what's called a benign tumor. Benign tumor is basically a pile of abnormal cells, and it will stop growing. It's going to grow, it's going to get to a certain size, and then it's going to quit. Now, don't just ignore it and say, oh, good, no worries, I'm okay forever. Watch these things. If for some reason it starts growing again, get in there. Get to your physician. This is changing. We need to watch it. We need to do something about it. Hopefully, if you guys have a melanoma, they're all benign. The ones we don't like are the ones we call malignant tumor. These are the ones, malignant tumors grows and spreads rapidly and uncontrollably. They're cheating. They're not following the rules. As I mentioned before, angiogenesis. They're going to steal blood supply. Oh, make sure to spell it right. Blood supply. They're going to go to metastasis, where they're going to spread throughout the body. That's why we want to identify these things as quickly as we possibly can. So here's a benign tumor. Cell starts growing, gets this mass of tissue, and then we're done. It stops. Here's the malignant tumor. Starts growing. So pay attention to the purple cell. That's your abnormal cell. That's the one that isn't right. Built up all these extras, but again, they fizzled out and just kind of stopped. Down here, those purple cells grew and grew and grew and grew and continued to grow. And then once they got big enough where they could break off pieces into the blood vessels or the lymphatic vessels, now metastasis. Now they're spreading through the body, and where they pop out, we have no idea. That's where it becomes concerning. That's where it's a matter of constant monitoring, keeping an eye on this, tracking things. So if it does show up somewhere else, we can jump on treatment as quickly as possible. So, all right. So here are your, as I say, melanomas by the numbers. One of the most common cancer diagnoses among young adults. Skin cancer. One of the most common ones out there. 2 out of 3, generally in women. Leading cause of cancer death in women, 25 to 30. Rates are going up. Last 3 decades, the rates of melanoma are increasing. Now, 5-year survival rate is great. Could be a little better, but it's great if it has not metastasized. That's at 98.7% here. That means you found it, you got it, it was small, they removed it, you're good. If it's metastasized, meaning it's spread, survival rate's significantly lower, 27%. That means what started out as that small mole has now reached other parts of your body. We each make individual decisions on living our lives, what activities and things we want to do, but the statistics show every 4 sessions of a tanning bed increases your odds of developing a melanoma by 15%. Let that number sink in. So you go to a tanning bed, you're exposing your skin to high levels of ultraviolet light to change the color of the skin. So you're damaging the cells. As you damage those cells with a tanning bed or sun exposure, things like that, you have the potential to mutate the DNA, which then can cause those genes we've talked about, the oncogene, the proto-oncogene, the tumor suppressor gene. You can cause those genes not to work correctly, which means it's not going to stop the tumor growth, or it's going to trigger the abnormal growth of the cells. If you have had a bunch of severe sunburns when you were young, under 18 usually, you double the risk of your melanoma, or double the risk of developing melanomas. So genetics, but also your environment, play a role in the situation. So we are all adults who make our decisions for ourselves and our friends and families and everybody in our lives. I just want you guys to be aware. Now you have knowledge and information to make these decisions. Okay, so other things. How do we treat it? Well, chemotherapy is one option. Yeah. Here's 2 women in treatment, older woman, younger woman. Why are they both in treatment for cancer? Was it because of genetics? Was it because of environmental triggers? Ultimately, I would care less what causes. I want to figure out how to stop it. But we do need to understand and identify the cause to help people make good decisions to be able to stop it or minimize cancer. So is this older woman here just because of a lifetime of the cell cycle, things developing, things changing over the course of 60, 70, whatever years? Is a young lady there because of, unfortunately, very bad luck, and maybe she had genetics that she had no control over that put her in that chair? But what we want to figure out as a society is trying to understand better what are the things that increase the likelihood of developing cancer. And then what can we do to try to minimize that? So here's a diagnosis statistics by age. According to cancer research, obviously, as we get older, we tend to increase the number of people who have cancer. Some of that's just a lifetime accumulation of small errors in our DNA and mistakes that just accumulate over time. You know, if you're 5 years old, pretty low chance you're going to have cancer in that 5 to 9 year age bracket. It's horrible when we see kids with this. But if we don't have the awareness when we're young about how our environment and our lifestyle can contribute to this, we're more likely to wind up being one of these people who has it later in life. And when we're young, it's easy to say, I'm invincible, nothing's going to get me, I'm not worried about it, that's so many years down the road, I don't care. But will you care later down the road? If your lifestyle earlier in life increased your likelihood, and then you're in your 50s, 60s, 70s, whatever age bracket, and you have cancer, you can't look back and say, oh, I wish I could have changed this behavior I did when I was younger. It's too late. Now you're paying for your behaviors earlier in life. We're all going to make these decisions. But what I want to do here is just show you guys some of the things that cause this. Okay? So some of the things that can contribute to this. So one statistic to mention, the average, oh, got to change my font color. The average age of cancer diagnosis is 66 in the United States. Obviously, people get diagnosed earlier, some people later, some people never. But when we look across the spectrum of diagnoses, about 66 is the average age of diagnosis. So if friends, family, whoever is in their mid-60s, are they going to be diagnosed? I hope not. Hopefully nobody gets this diagnosis. But this is what the data shows. This is what the science is showing us. So, all right, some behaviors and things that can lead to cancer. Now, let me back that up. That can increase the likelihood of developing cancer. Smoking. It shouldn't be any surprise to anyone who smokes if they develop cancer at a later point. It increases your risk phenomenally. Look at the statistics. Look at the data. Look at the science. There is no safe smoking that, oh, this cigarette won't increase my likelihood, or tobacco, chewing tobacco, or any of these products, none of them can brag zero increase in likelihood of cancer. There's significant increase in cancer rates among smokers compared to non-smokers. I mentioned earlier, sunburn. You cook your skin repeatedly, you're just asking for melanomas. Now, maybe not when you're younger. 10 years, 20 years down the road, all of a sudden you got that spot, that weird mole, that goofy growth. So we'll talk more about the type of behaviors and the type of cancers that they cause in our next lecture.